Everything can change in a literal matter of seconds. I mean, think about it. One moment, you are watching a player operating at the absolute, undisputed peak of human performance. We're talking about a world-class athlete doing things that defy physics. And then, in the blink of an eye, the next moment, they're down. Their season and potentially their entire career is just over. Welcome to NFL Nexus. I'm your host, and today we are breaking down a cinematic explainer of a crisis that is quite literally hiding in plain sight. What we are about to look at today isn't just about the game of football. It is about a massive billion-dollar industry, the absolute breaking point of the human body, and a highly controversial playing surface that is quietly but undeniably dictating the future of the sport. Before we start digging into the truth beneath the cleats of your favorite players, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this explainer, and comment on what you thought down below. And hey, if you truly want to support our deep dives into the unseen mechanics of the league, become a channel member today. Oh, and also, be sure to turn on your animated subtitles, because you're absolutely not going to want to miss a single detail of this investigation.
The cost of doing nothing is paid for by players' bodies. Just let that sink in for a moment. Really process what is being said there. This quote comes directly from former Colts and current Packers linebacker Isaiah Franklin. And look, this isn't just some passing remark he threw out on social media to get a few likes. It's not just complaining. It is a chilling, fundamental indictment of the current state of professional football. When you and I think about the inherent dangers of this sport, our minds immediately go to the collisions, right? We picture those colossal, high-speed, violent impacts between giants. We expect the damage to come from the opponent standing across the line of scrimmage. That's the game. But what actually happens when the greatest threat to a player's livelihood isn't a 250-pound linebacker, but the very ground they are standing on? Franklin's words perfectly establish the life-and-death physical stakes that these guys face every single time they step onto an artificial surface. We're talking about a slow, methodical, completely invisible wear and tear that ultimately leads to a sudden, devastating breaking point.
15. That is the number of NFL teams that currently actively use artificial turf for their home game fields during the regular season. Guys, that is nearly half the entire league. Now, to really put that into perspective, you have to remember that we are living in an era where sports science is more advanced than it has ever been in human history. NFL franchises are out here spending tens of millions of dollars optimizing player diets, tracking their sleep schedules with microscopic precision, and building out these state-of-the-art sci-fi level recovery protocols. Yet despite all of that incredible medical advancement, 15 multi-billion-dollar organizations are still sending their most highly paid, highly vulnerable assets out onto a surface that data continuously suggests is incredibly dangerous. It's almost baffling, isn't it? It is a massive, glaring blind spot in their otherwise relentless pursuit of physical perfection. We are talking about half of the stadiums in the richest sports league in the entire world actively choosing to use a surface that their own players are practically begging them to replace. But why? Why are 15 multi-billion-dollar teams holding out? Well, to understand the true depth of that standoff, we have to look very closely at exactly what is happening to the players the moment their cleats hit these fields.
The absolute defining factor in this crisis, the thing you simply cannot ignore, is the drastic uptick in non-contact injuries. As fans, when we watch a game, we expect the violence of the tackle. That's part of the deal. But what is unfolding on these artificial surfaces is entirely different, and in a lot of ways, it's far more insidious. We are seeing a massive surge in players going down in agonizing pain without a single defender even touching them, and it all comes down to pure, unforgiving biomechanics. Because of the rigid nature of artificial turf, a player's cleats completely lock into those synthetic fibers. The surface doesn't give way like natural soil and grass do, it doesn't break away. So the foot stays firmly planted, but the incredible momentum of a 220-pound athlete running at 20 miles per hour keeps moving forward. The result? The joint takes the entire brunt of that massive torque. We are talking about violently torn ACLs. We are talking about high ankle sprains that linger for months and months. And most terrifyingly, we are talking about ruptured Achilles tendons, an injury that can instantly strip an elite athlete of their explosiveness and completely permanently alter the trajectory of their career. Make no mistake, these aren't football injuries in the traditional sense. These are surface injuries. It is the raw physics of the turf fighting against the fragile biomechanics of the human body. And right now, the turf is winning.
Now, for the players, the situation shifts from being just tragic to being deeply, almost unbelievably hypocritical when you look ahead to the year 2026. The FIFA World Cup is coming to North America. Throughout the tournament's incredibly expansive 78-game schedule, multiple NFL venues are going to be hosting these major international matches. But here's the catch. FIFA operates under a very strict standard. They outright demand natural grass for their athletes. They literally will not play on turf. Consequently, 7 of the 11 hosting NFL venues are actively switching out their artificial turf fields for temporary natural grass, just to appease the international governing body of soccer. Just think about the striking irony of this situation for a second. The FIFA World Cup final is going to kick off at MetLife Stadium. MetLife is a venue that has garnered a notorious, honestly terrifying reputation among NFL rosters as the ultimate lower body injury machine. It's dreaded. Yet for soccer players, the stadium ownership is suddenly rolling out the red carpet and taking the time and money to lay down lush natural grass. The NFLPA has pointed out this glaring contradiction repeatedly, rightfully arguing that owners are effortlessly doing for soccer players what they absolutely refuse to do for their own NFL players. It exposes a massive double standard in player safety that the locker rooms find completely impossible to ignore.
92%. Take a deep breath and just look at the sheer magnitude of that number. According to the NFLPA, a staggering 92% of NFL players overwhelmingly prefer natural grass and want it made mandatory across the entire league. Think about that in the context of any other job. In almost any other massive industry, if 92% of the workforce explicitly declared that their daily working conditions were physically destroying their bodies and they demanded a known safer alternative, there would be immediate sweeping organizational changes. The pressure would be insurmountable, right? You'd have to change it. But in the NFL, the 14 other clubs who continue to roll out artificial turf aren't in any rush to revert back to nature. And the reason is incredibly simple. The NFL allows them to keep the turf. And artificial surfaces are significantly cheaper to maintain over a long season, especially in multi-use stadiums that host massive concerts and monster truck rallies during the week. At the end of the day, it saves the owners money. The players are screaming for change, unifying their voices across locker rooms from coast to coast, but the systemic change remains completely frozen, simply because the league rules do not mandate it. Because of this standstill, the players are no longer keeping quiet. They are taking this fight directly to the public square. Look at this incredibly powerful statement from Indianapolis Colts star running back Jonathan Taylor. He recently took to social media to declare, loudly and clearly, natural grass isn't out of reach. Prioritizing players shouldn't be either. We're #worth the cost. And Taylor is not alone in this fight. He is actively joining a massive, rapidly growing movement, standing shoulder to shoulder with other prominent, highly compensated stars like Caleb Williams and Laramie Tunsil, pushing the #worth the cost. When you have a franchise running back, a player whose entire livelihood, legacy, and earning potential depends entirely on the explosive, microscopic movements of his lower body, publicly pleading with the league to prioritize his physical health over a stadium landscaping budget, it speaks volumes about the level of desperation inside that locker room. These athletes aren't stupid. They are well aware that the agricultural technology exists. They know the engineering expertise exists to make it happen. And they absolutely know that the billions of dollars in resources exist. The billionaires writing the checks simply have to make the decision if their players are, in fact, worth the cost of the upgrade. To truly understand the friction between these massive ownership investments and basic player safety, we need to zoom in on one specific organization caught directly in the crosshairs of this controversy: the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts represent a fascinating, almost perfect microcosm of the entire league's ongoing struggle with this exact issue. They are a historically storied franchise with incredibly deep pockets. They have a roster heavily loaded with highly paid, elite talent, and yet they are currently navigating a deeply complex relationship with their home stadium's playing surface. By all internal accounts, this is an organization that clearly wants to do right by their players. They really do. But they are trapped by the physical infrastructure of their building and the brutal economics of modern stadium management. So let's look at exactly how the players feel about the daily environment the Colts ownership is currently providing for them. The 2026 NFLPA report card for the Indianapolis Colts really exposes a stark, undeniable divide within the organization. Look closely at these highly specific grades given directly by the players. The new first-year ownership trio of Carly Gordon, Kalen Jackson, and Casey Foyt, they received a stellar A grade from the locker room. General Manager Chris Ballard, he earned another A. So the players clearly respect the front office leadership. They trust the people running the building. The physical locker room itself sits at a manageable C+, while team travel comes in at a totally fine B-. But then, you look down at the absolute bottom of the ledger, Lucas Oil Stadium Field, D. It is a massive, glaring outlier on an otherwise really solid organizational report card. The players are openly, publicly grading their own home field as a total failure. It is the lowest rating by far. You have an A-tier ownership group providing a literal D-tier playing surface for their elite athletes. The contrast is incredibly stark, and it highlights exactly where the massive disconnect lies between management's good intentions and the very real physical reality on game day. Now, to be fair, the Colts actually tried to fix this. They didn't just ignore the mounting issue or pretend it wasn't there. Ahead of the 2024 season, ownership spent significant money to implement a new, first-of-its-kind artificial turf called Matrix Helix. It was heavily marketed as a revolutionary step forward in stadium technology. It was supposedly designed to be the absolute closest synthetic thing to real grass, engineered specifically to be more forgiving on the player's joints and ligaments during those intense cuts and high-impact tackles. So the intention to improve the working conditions was undoubtedly there. The massive financial investment in new technology was there. But fast forward to the 2026 report card, and the players are still handing out a dismal D grade for the field. So what does that tell us about the broader crisis? It proves that synthetic technology, no matter how advanced, no matter how heavily researched or how unbelievably expensive it is simply not solving the fundamental biomechanical problem. The players' ongoing demands in the persistent lower body injuries show that you simply cannot fake natural grass. A D grade for a brand new, state-of-the-art turf system is a absolutely damning verdict on the synthetic turf industry itself. Which brings us to the ultimate, staggering question hanging over front offices across the entire league right now. How do you protect a $46 million investment? We really have to shift the focus from the synthetic blades of grass to the brutal, bottom-line financial reality of running an NFL franchise. These teams are essentially managing heavily leveraged portfolios of incredibly expensive, incredibly fragile human assets. When an organization hands out tens of millions of dollars in guaranteed money to a cornerstone player, how can they possibly justify risking that massive, franchise-altering investment on a subpar, degraded playing surface? It doesn't make any business sense. Every single time that star player plants their foot on unforgiving artificial turf, the franchise is essentially gambling with its own financial stability and its long-term competitive future. One caught cleat can instantly vaporize millions of dollars in salary cap space and completely ruin a team's championship window. Let's look at a concrete example. Consider DeForest Buckner, the Colts' fiercely dominant three-time Pro Bowler and an absolute force of nature on the interior defensive line. The Colts recently signed Buckner to a massive 2-year, $46 million contract extension to anchor their defense. And look at his elite, game-changing production on the left side of this table. In 2025, despite his age and the wear and tear, he generated 3.6 quarterback pressures per game. That is dangerously close to the 3.8 pressures he averaged when he was in his absolute prime as a first-team All-Pro back in 2020. He remains a complete and total game wrecker. But you have to look at the right side of the ledger to see the immense physical risk. Over recent seasons, his body has unfortunately begun to betray him, leading to 12 missed games, and his 2025 campaign tragically ended with a massive, season-ending neck surgery. This breakdown right here perfectly encapsulates the razor-thin tightrope teams are walking. You have a $46 million, highly productive asset being constantly subjected to unforgiving environments and car crash collisions that are rapidly breaking his body down. And when a foundational player of this caliber goes down, the entire structural integrity of the defense collapses right along with him.
And the truly tragic part of this reality is that the pure talent hasn't faded one bit. The football IQ is sharper than it's ever been. In a recent ESPN poll gathering opinions from anonymous NFL scouts, coaches, and top executives, Buckner still received votes for being a top 10 defensive tackle in the entire league. People know how good he is. One anonymous defensive line coach summed up the situation plainly, saying, "No real drop-off in his play. He's still elite, just older and injured." That quote is haunting. It strips away all the shiny glamour of the NFL and amplifies what is truly at stake when an aging star straps on his helmet and takes the field. The mind is incredibly sharp. The processing speed is world-class. The raw power is still absolutely there. But the body, battered by years of violent collisions on unforgiving synthetic surfaces, is slowly, inevitably giving out. Older and injured is the terrifying, unavoidable reality for veterans fighting in today's NFL trenches. And playing half of your brutal 17-game schedule on a degraded artificial surface, that only aggressively accelerates that inevitable, painful decline. The road to the 2026 training camp for DeForest Buckner has been absolutely grueling, demanding a level of physical and mental resilience that most regular people simply cannot comprehend. It isn't just about smiling and rehabbing for the team's social media cameras. It is a deeply personal, agonizingly painful journey back to just a baseline level of human function. Buckner recently revealed a heartbreaking detail about his recovery process. In the first couple of weeks after his brutal neck surgery, he couldn't even physically lift his own kids. I mean, think about the heavy gravity of that statement. The extreme physical toll of this sport literally stripped a massive, world-class athlete and a father of the basic ability to hold his children. And now, to merely survive his 11th season in the unforgiving trenches of the NFL, Buckner is being forced to fundamentally alter his entire playing technique. He recently admitted to the press, technique-wise, I'm going to have to change things here and there. He has to consciously change the very split-second instincts that made him a $46 million player in the first place, all just to protect his surgically repaired body from the brutal realities of the gridiron. So you might be wondering, if the players absolutely hate it, if the franchise stars are breaking down, and if the ownership genuinely seems to care, why don't the Colts just plant natural grass tomorrow? The answer lies in the harsh, concrete reality of what we'll call the Lucas Oil Stadium problem. The physical hurdle the organization faces here is massive and incredibly complex. Lucas Oil Stadium is a state-of-the-art hybrid venue with a retractable roof. However, when it was originally designed and constructed, it was built entirely without the necessary deep earth drainage system required to easily accommodate a living, breathing, natural grass field. It simply wasn't engineered for agriculture. You can't just roll out thick layers of sod onto a flat concrete slab and expect it to survive the violent rigors of an NFL season. It would turn into mud in a week. To successfully switch to real grass, the Colts would literally have to tear up the massive concrete foundation of the stadium floor and install an entirely new, incredibly expensive plumbing and drainage infrastructure from absolute scratch. It is an architectural and logistical nightmare. So it all becomes a brutal standoff between massive capital expenditure and basic human preservation. On one side of the scale, you have the eye-watering multi-million-dollar financial expense of literally tearing up a stadium's foundational floor to install complex grass drainage systems. It would cost stadium owners millions upon millions of dollars up front, plus the ongoing exorbitant monthly cost of constantly maintaining, growing, and replacing real grass inside a massive climate-controlled dome. It's a huge bill. But on the exact opposite side of the scale, you have the devastating, undeniable physical toll on aging, high-priced stars like DeForest Buckner. You have ruptured Achilles tendons, shredded ACLs, and brilliant athletic careers cut entirely too short by the unforgiving floor beneath them. You have a 92% majority of your elite workforce actively publicly begging the league for basic fundamental workplace safety. The standoff is perfectly clear, the data is undeniable at this point, and the tension between the front office and the locker room is rapidly reaching a fever pitch.
So what gives? Will the owners finally step up and pay the staggering financial price to install natural grass? Or will the players be forced to continue paying the price with their bodies? The clock is ticking, the lower body injuries are mounting week by week, and as the 2026 season rapidly approaches, the silence from the league office on this issue is absolutely deafening. The battle lines have been drawn, and something is going to have to give. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. If this cinematic explainer opened your eyes to the hidden realities of the game, please make sure to subscribe to NFL Nexus, like this explainer, leave a comment down below with your thoughts on the turf versus grass debate, and become a channel member today to support our work. Until next time, keep your eyes on the field.